You're listening to The Monetized Mom, the podcast that teaches moms of faith how to monetize their expertise online to create influence, impact, income, and more importantly, financial independence. I'm your host, Flo Alexander. Let's chat. Hey, Money Mamas, welcome to the Monetized Mom podcast. I'm your host, Flo Alexander, and in this week's episode, we're going to be talking about how to balance marriage, motherhood, and business. So if you're interested in learning how, stay tuned. Now, before I get started, I want to share a free resource with you. The Monetized Mom Master Playbook is my 4-part framework for turning your expertise into a profitable online business. And yes, you heard right, it's free. You can grab it now at themonetizedmom.com/freebie. Again, that's themonetizedmom.com/freebie. Now let's get on with this episode. So by the time this episode airs, my son will be 1 month old. And to say that life has become extremely hectic is an understatement. Navigating 2 under 2 is definitely an adventure, and people kind of warn me about it. But yeah, it's definitely been an adventure. My time is even more limited than it has ever been, which makes running a business so much harder. So obviously, I'm glad that I built a business that can earn income without me being constantly on social media or trading my time for money. If not, I would definitely be in deep trouble when it came to my business and its sustainability. But for the last month, my life has literally been in 3-hour increments. At max, I may have 5 hours in a day to get things done. And that's including feeding myself, bathing, drinking enough water, and just trying to make myself look put together and having time to actually think and just be. So my business gets very little time these days. Honestly, I would say at a max, I probably can spend 2 hours, and that may be pushing it, a day. So the question that you might be asking is, how do I still manage to get things done? In fact, how do I even manage to record this podcast episode? So I'm going to be talking about the things that I practically do that you can implement yourself. So let's talk about time management. I've already shared how limited my time is. So to make the most out of it, I do a few things. Number 1, I wake up before my kids. Now, the fact of the matter is, if I want to have time to think, reflect, journal, shower, and eat without a kid snatching food from my plate, I have to wake up early. Now, with a newborn, this really could mean that I am cutting my already little sleep short, but it's definitely necessary if I want to do more than, be up with my kids, feeding and having to run errands. Like if I want to get some other things done in my life, I have to get up early. Now, during the week, I try to wake up at least an hour and a half before my kids, mainly my toddler. Now, this gives me time to have my morning routine and also to check any emails or do some quick things in the business that require thought and requires it to be quiet so that I can actually think. Now, this can include writing notes for podcast episodes, so upcoming episodes, captions to a post for social media, or checking emails. And I do this while eating, so I'm working through breakfast. So the first thing that I do is wake up before my kids. And like I said, namely my toddler, because obviously a toddler requires more attention than a newborn. My newborn mostly just sleeps, or he's going to be crying because he's hungry, and in which case I will feed him, and then I can do the next tip that I have, which is leverage my phone. Now, if there is an opportunity for me to multitask, I will. This means that I leverage my phone to do a lot of things. So for instance, when I'm nursing my son, I may also be on my phone writing out those captions that I mentioned for a post, jotting down ideas in my note app, or making a to-do list for things that I need to get done when I have some undivided time. So when I actually used to write my blog posts for my website, I would do this on my phone as well. And this was before I had 2 kids, but I would do it on my phone because it allows you to get things done on the go. And I'm able to write things down whenever inspiration hits. So our phones are literally computers. So take advantage of that. And honestly, it just makes it easy to get things done on the go or in between those large pockets of time that I may have between like when my kids are asleep. So I definitely leverage my phone. So again, if my newborn is awake and I'm nursing him, I can do some of those things that I would be doing during breakfast. But if my toddler is awake, it's just completely different ball game. So I have to wake up early just to make sure I get ahead of her. The third thing is I delete 99% of my emails. And I know that answering emails is a large part of business for some people, managing their business, especially if you're a content creator and you rely on brand deals and that type of stuff. However, the vast majority of my emails that I receive, they get deleted. Most of them are spam, first of all. Then the rest of them are unsolicited requests to be featured on my website. The rest of them are like generic emails that go out to, like, they've obviously gone out to a mass group of people. They don't address me by name. Those automatically get deleted. That's kind of one of my criteria for reading emails. If in the actual preview of the email, I don't see where my name is addressed, where it just says hi, or hi, Mama and Money, or hi, the monetized mom, like, you can tell that is a generic email. It automatically gets deleted. So there are very few emails that actually require a response. Very few emails that are legitimate emails directly to me. So with that being said, I delete 99% of my emails. I could probably go ahead and put like a filter on it to make it a lot easier, but I just delete 99% of the email. So that takes out a whole lot of the work that I would otherwise have to do within my business. I also have canned responses set up in my email. So if there is something that does require me to respond, but it's something like that's going to be like a response that I often give, I already have those canned responses in my email account, so I don't have to type them out. So that's another little hack that you can have with emails to help you save time on that. But again, like I said, I delete 99% of my emails anyway. The fourth thing that I do is I batch when I can. And I've talked about this before, but I try to get as much done as I can when I have time to do it. So I batch things, and I plan to batch things like my podcast episodes and also with my content, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But I try my hardest to execute everything within the limited time frame that I have. And if I can, it's an absolute win. If I can't, I'll get it in the next time space that I have to do stuff. So I definitely try to batch everything that requires me to be present at one time. So again, like recording podcast episodes, and then eventually when I go back to doing YouTube videos, I will be batching those as well so that I can get more done in the time frame that I have. So the next thing that I do is I plan out content at least a month ahead. So I mentioned being back on Instagram, but I am, if I didn't mention it, I thought I did, but I'm back on Instagram on Mama and Money, which is my main business. And then I also have the Monetized Mom, which you can go ahead and follow. So follow the Monetized Mom on Instagram. But anyway, I'm back on Instagram. But before I made the first post on those accounts, I made sure I had at least a month's worth of content or more. And this is because I wanted to get as far ahead as possible and create as much of content as I could during the time that I had. So for me, being a month ahead on my content gives me breathing room. So I know that if I miss a week or two, or I get behind somehow, I don't have to scramble to get something together, or I don't have to have a break in my content. So this is definitely one of my biggest secret weapons when it comes to managing business in general. Even before having 2 kids, I like to have at least a month's worth of content or more already planned out. And that's not saying that all the captions are done, but they're at some stage of the development. So either I've already gotten the design done on it, I've already gotten the copywriting done, which means the caption on it, I've already gotten the idea, or it's already scheduled. I need to have at least a month's worth of stuff so that if I'm working on content, it's just adding, say, the caption, or it's just creating the actual graphic in Canva, or recording whatever needs to be recorded. So I like to get a month ahead when it comes to content so that I have that breathing room and I'm not trying to get everything done the week that it's due, the day that it's due, when I know I have limited time to do it. So the sixth thing that I do that you can practically do is that I outsource. And I've talked about this before, but I outsource some things in my business. I have a podcast editor. I have writers for my blog. I also have a CPA who also helps with bookkeeping. So this takes away some of the heavy lifting that I previously had to do or could do when I had more time. Also, my daughter currently goes to daycare, which makes a huge difference in what I'm able to do. So as a toddler, she obviously requires the most attention. So having her in school allows me to focus on the newborn. So I could not say all this without saying I do send her to daycare as of now. That may change in the future, but right now she goes to daycare, and that does help me as far as being able to take advantage of these breaks that I have while my son is sleeping. Otherwise, it would be a completely different way of managing. I would have to manage around her schedule. So that will be even limited time, and which I'm sure that day will come when my son gets older and they start transitioning schedules. I will have to pivot, but I think these tips still will remain true. I will still do these things. I will just have a lot less time to do them. And then lastly, my husband and I share the load. I think that's important to recognize that the dynamic of your marriage changes once you have kids, period. A lot of your time is spent managing the children, so it's easy to let your relationship fall by the wayside, and that gets even harder when you have multiple children. So we have this unspoken rule in our household. Actually, I guess it's unspoken, but it's something that we kind of established before we even got married when we were going through premarital counseling, is that we don't have like set gender roles in our house. My husband will wash clothes. He will bathe the kids when it's necessary. In fact, my husband washed the clothes the majority of the time within our marriage, just his preference. I will take out the trash. I will trim the hedges. I will do what's necessary to be done in the house. In fact, I'm the more mechanically inclined of the two of us. So it's not uncommon for me to be doing things with tools and building stuff in the house. So we don't have those set gender roles. Whatever needs to be done is going to get done. And that's kind of our unwritten rule. So this gives each of us time to get things done. Like my husband may need to work late or from home. And so I may take on things, and I may need to do things for the business, and he may give me a reprieve by taking the kids or doing things around the house. So I think it's important to know when you're married, it's important to share a load if you want to be able to manage all of these different aspects of your life. And I do want to point out that there is no such thing as balance. I know I'm using the term balance. It's really just being able to handle all these responsibilities. Balance would imply that these things are equal importance. And no way that my business is of equal importance as my marriage or as my children. So it's not really balance, but it's being able to flow and ebb and flow between the different responsibilities that you have. So I just wanted to make sure I made that note that there is really no such thing as balance, as much as it is being able to ebb and flow between your different responsibilities. And the last thing is make time for your spouse if you are married. Again, children make it tremendously hard for this to happen, but you have to be intentional about making that time. Now, it's definitely a lot harder that now that we have a newborn and literally our life has been in like 3-hour increments, and I'm trying to go to sleep when the baby sleeps because I have to get up and nurse. And so it's definitely much harder, but we are being intentional about making the most of the time that we have, even if it's like 15 minutes. I remember the other night, my husband was like, I was trying to get some things done. And he was like, one, well, who says you have to get all this stuff? It was stuff around the house. He was like, who says you have to get all this stuff done right now? 2, he ended up doing it for me anyway. But then he was like, we have 15 minutes before this baby wakes up. Like, you need to sit down or else we will have spent the whole day chasing kids and feeding kids. So 15 minutes is what we had. And we sat and we talked, and I think we watched TV for a little. I think it was the Oscars was on at the time. So we watched a little bit of the Oscars before, I had to get up and do things for the baby. So just be intentional about the time that you have and take advantage of it. And I will recognize the fact that my husband has the ability to even work from home, and some people may not have that ability. And so him having that option, at least one day a week, we can set aside time to make that our day where we are at home together and we're spending time together. So just be intentional about the time that you spend with each other, knowing that it's going to be limited, but you have to be intentional about making sure that you invest in your relationship so that it doesn't fall by the wayside and it doesn't become a scenario where you're focusing more on your kids and your business. And then, 18 years down the road, 20 years down the road, you're looking at this person like, who are you? Because you've spent so much time with your kids. So definitely be intentional about the time time that you spend with each other, even if it's limited time. So one thing that I just like to keep as a rule of thumb, regardless when it comes to running my business, is I try not to work my business when my kids are up or when my husband and I finally have alone time. So I'm really working on being more present. Even with a newborn who has no clue what's going on, I want to be present when I have his attention, when he is awake. I want to make sure, well, let me say awake and not nursing, but when he is awake, I want to make sure that I'm present. So there is nothing in my business that is so urgent that it cannot wait behind something that is for my family. So my word for this year is well. I want to be well in all areas of my life. And so that includes me being present. That's a relational aspect, having a well relationship with my children and with my spouse. And so in order to do that, I have to be present. So the business gets put behind them because, again, it's not balanced. They aren't equal importance. I will let my business fail before I let my marriage or my family fail. So that's just one rule of thumb that I have that you can also definitely implement into your business and your life as well. So now, like I mentioned before, as my kids get older, as schedules change, I'll of course have to pivot again. Nonetheless, everything that I've mentioned will still apply. Everything will still apply. It will just mean I will have less time to do what I need to do, which means having this already as a foundation, already having this as a habit will be that much more beneficial. So anyway, as always, if you found this episode helpful, don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave a review, especially on Apple Podcasts. It helps this podcast get out to other moms who are looking to build their business so that they can have impact, income, and influence for the kingdom. And with that, I'll talk to you in the next episode.